how have you really seen, AI evolve across all of these industries, and how does this really somewhere translate into similarities versus differences?
Customer at the center, compliance, accuracy, risk management, hyper personalizing it
Right.
for the consumers.
But coming to the perspective of AI, really, Meenakshi, how have you seen this evolve across these industries over time?
Banking and BFSI has always been 20 years ahead. I see a 25, 30 years difference.
Whoa.
Pharma is really catching up in 4 to 5 years is how I see it.
Business processes within supply chain which could really benefit with AI.
First is process digitalization. Without those, you will not generate the data. Really remove the drudgery of the work.
Welcome to the Bottom Line on AI, where we decode the impact of artificial intelligence on enterprise strategy. I'm your host, Srividya Kannan. Today, we explore how AI is revolutionizing core business functions across diverse industries. We are joined by a distinguished leader who has spearheaded digital transformation at the intersection of data, operations, and technology. I'm thrilled to introduce Meenakshi Chhajer, the Global Digital Supply Chain Head at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Meenakshi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Srividya.
How have you been?
Very good.
Given your background of coming in from banking to consumer goods to now pharmaceuticals,
Right.
how have you really seen AI evolve across all of these industries, and how does this really somewhere translate into similarities versus differences? So what is your take on that?
Thank you. Then three different sectors,
Yes.
Srividya, and it's been 18 years journey. My pharmaceutical journey is 2 years, so it's very heavy with BFSI and CPG. See, what is common across the three sectors when it comes to technology and AI enabling and driving business is customer centricity.
Right.
Across the three sectors, I have seen customer at the center. And again, been very fortunate to be part of three prestigious organizations.
Right.
So all three of them have really used technology and AI to put customers in the center. And I can take examples. What is unique to each one of them is definitely compliance, accuracy, risk management, which is very, very core to banking and pharma,
Right.
compared to CPG, wherein CPG, the consumer insights, taking the right product, hyper personalizing it
Right.
for the consumers and making it available to the kirana stores as well as to the e-com stores.
Yeah.
I think that is very, very core to the CPG sector. So they differ in that aspect. At the same time, pharma is about making lives really triumph, right? Dr. Reddy's operate in oncology, in various streams of medicine, generic pharma and O2C pharma. So making it very cost efficient, making it accessible to the patients across the world where we operate in is again very, very core. So accessibility is very important
Right.
for pharma. Similarly, accessibility is also important for banking, financial inclusivity. You know what kind of revolution UPI has made.
Yeah.
So inclusivity, accessibility is important for pharma as well. So there are those commonalities if you see customer centricity, cost effectiveness, accessibility. And there is this uniqueness of compliance, risk management to both pharma and banking,
Yeah.
and
More
the
accel-
creativity,
yeah. More
innovation
intense.
to CPG sectors.
Absolutely, wonderful,
That's how.
absolutely. But coming to the perspective of AI, really, Meenakshi, how have you seen this evolve across these industries over time?
Banking and BFSI has always been 20 years ahead of CPG, and CPG is 10 years ahead of pharma.
Is that right?
That's how I see. So if you see BFSI and CPG, I see a 25-30 years difference.
Whoa,
So I often joke that I'm actually going backward in terms of maturity of technology and AI, but at the same time, I have seen evolution. So pharma is really catching up.
Right.
I would say in just next few years, at least the Indian generic pharma would catch up with the FMCG. So they will be at par in 4 to 5 years is how I see. Now, BFSI is also running very, very fast. The fraud management is completely automated. I'm sure all of us get the credit card, sales calls, which are very hyper personalized, right? They have access to the data. Yes, there are those consent-oriented processes, but we get hyper-personalized calls in BFSI already. But that was happening, I think, 10 years ago, end-user computing. Now, today we are calling it autonomous processes using enabled by agentic AI. The end-user computing and end-user automation in banking was happening in 2010s and 15s. So you see the decade difference between the industries is how I see it. In banking, the reconciliation is still the nth level, the last zero, the accounts payable, the entire asset liability management. It has always been automated from the 2010s. And now, of course, financial inclusivity is enabled, is how I see it. CPG is evolving. I think, when I was with with Unilever, I saw amazing use cases of AI already getting in a POC stage, right? It will take some time to ramp up, but at the same time, whether it is, and again, I'll talk about supply chain and procurement and finance, where I have spent most of my Unilever period in, the entire demand forecasting process, for example, right? It is again machine learning mostly and deep learning which was utilized, but across 120 countries of Unilever, we have really implemented demand forecasting with stat and ML. So that is like completely done in 2024-25 itself. And now they are building it with the agents. Can all the planners, all types of planners, demand, supply, can they really have their own agents? Or to enable the SNOP meetings which they participate in, for example. So it's already done in CPG, which is happening in pharma now.
Right.
I hope that gives you a perspective of 20 years behind, and then again pharma catching up very fast. CPG, this is how I see the three sectors.
If we speak a little bit about supply chain operations and talk a little bit in depth about business processes within supply chain which could really benefit with AI, and where these industries are with that in terms of stages of maturity, what's your thought on that?
Sure. So first, let me tell you, the three-layered structure is the approach which I have preferred to take. First is process digitalization, right? You, instead of doing the process through Excels and the paper, you first do it on the systems. Without those, you will not generate the data which is required for the 3 layers of AI on top, right? And that's fundamental.
Sure.
Now, you can have your own systems, or you can have buy decisions taken. Again, I'm not naming the technologies which we are using, but if you see the supply chain end-to-end process from demand forecasting to supply planning to customer service to logistics and procurement, the entire chain can be digitalized.
Right.
Now, of course, there has to be a sensibility of digitizing and digitalizing. I'm consciously using the word digitalize.
Right.
You really, really do it in the tools, including manufacturing, right? The entire MES and LIMS processes, etc., and the quality function. So once you have digitalized everything, then you can really think of AI. That's a fundamental. And then, of course, having the right quality of data is very important.
Absolutely.
All types of, let's say, data, supply chain, procurement, finance, and there has to be a very reliable data strategy on top of the process digitalization. That's the second layer, I say. Then you build your AI systems, whether it is autonomous decisions, whether it is data-driven KPI in performance management. So this is how I approach. Now, let me give you the examples. I think that's where the audience will also benefit from. I spoke about demand forecasting already. In case of procurement, what we are doing is we call it PAL. It's like a friend to a procurement buyer, wherein the entire contracting process and negotiating process can be enabled by the agentic AI. And we are doing a POC right now, but we have great, let's say, aspirations to really help the buyers to really remove the drudgery of the work, right? Why go through the contracts when I really need to just know, let's say, 10 lines before the negotiation call? Or can I really do the 70% of the contract automated, and I just really review the critical elements of the contract and really go to my legal and compliance for sign off. So these are the kind of use cases which I see live happening right now. I'll add up with a quality example, and quality example I've seen both in CPG as well as in pharma. The SOP update based on the latest quality inspection, quality assurance processes are getting enabled. Somebody is in the plant, let's say a 3-storied plant, and you are at the 3rd story, and you can't go to the laptop to really check what was my manual saying. And that's where you ask a question, and you save 30 minutes of going to your laptop, checking the query, going back to the 3rd floor, 3rd story, and doing the inspection. And that's when, if you can ask a question on your handphone and really be sure about what checks you should be doing. So quality, I think, is greatly enabled in both CPG and pharma. I see logistics as well. See, logistics is the last leg, right? Available to promise. Now, I'm not prescribing to use agentic AI or generative AI for supply planning processes. They are highly operations research oriented problems to solve, right? If you've done your process digitalization, it's enough, and you have right technology. But the entire supply planning needs to feed into logistics process. And it's the last leg. And the available to promise information to the end customer service person when he or she is really engaging with the salespeople and they are sitting in the SNOP meeting really helps. Simple platforms like, what is my inventory position going to look like in 3 months down the line in August, when am I going to stock out for a product A from a dedicated line, let's say L1, which is for a customer or a market segment M1. Those kind of questions we see getting enabled today, and I see it live. I see it live across the sectors.
Very interesting actually. And in some of these use cases, one could also leverage data coming in from news information worldwide, in terms of understanding how for instance, in your first use case of procurement, how your suppliers are really, if there's some news relating to your supplier, if there are underlying any risk-related data or any even geopolitical issues, and its ability to predict what kind of impact this may have with respect to not only your demand but also your supply, your logistics, and so on, to provide proactive alerts. Have you seen these kind of use cases more amplified now, or is this still early stages?
This is early stage, to answer you shortly. At the same time, there is merit in getting that data in, right? Before we say that we do sentiment analysis, and when we say that, okay, now the data can be fed into supplier scorecard and a dynamic supplier scorecard. We have a static supplier scorecard, at least in both the sectors which I have seen. It's a static supplier scorecard which gets updated on a monthly basis. Yes, it's data driven today. At the same time, does it get dynamic news and it gets updated and it sends alerts? We are not yet there. It is an art of possible today. What I would like to share is reading the competitor data. What is my competitor paying to the same supplier? At least in pharma, I have seen a use case, and we have piloted that, and we have rich external data coming from the exam, right? Wherein we use what our competitors are paying for the same material to the same supplier, and can we really bargain better or negotiate better? So those kind of use cases I have seen piloting better than what you're saying in terms of supplier scorecard.
On an average week, we also speak to a lot of enterprise customers. So one interesting other use case was really around commodity prices, and leveraging the data from those to actually make decisions internally, for instance. So yes, absolutely right. I think the external data is probably early stages for organizations.
For pharma, yes. In CPG, I think it is already used, at least in rule-based heuristics and modeling. The entire raw material, packaging material, price modeling we had already done 5 years back. And of course, it will get dynamic. Again, it was a static monthly process.
Right.
So I'm sure people would be really making it dynamically strong. I mean, with the crude prices going up and down, and a lot of commodity prices are impacted by wars.
Absolutely.
Right. So making it dynamic makes more sense.
Excellent. Let's talk a bit about process excellence and say operational resilience within organizations. I know we discussed quite a bit about supply chain, but are there additional business processes in that domain where you see, when we really speak about building in that strength and operational resilience within organizations, what kind of interesting AI initiatives have you seen in your previous experience?
So, one is connecting the end-to-end processes from your sales to demand to your FP&A. I think that's again a prerequisite for doing the operational resilience checks, Srividya. So if your systems are not connected, then you will get signals, but those signals may be the false alarms sometimes. So integrating the processes makes a lot of sense. At least let me take examples of the COVID, when the entire CPG sector moved from an SNOP cycle to an SNOE cycle, right? Where instead of a monthly process, you do the entire weekly process. And during those times, the supply-driven supply chain was the mantra for all the major global players. And that's where the operational resilience came into picture, when we were having the supply signals. Again, the connection was there, given to the demand processes, saying that this is what we can supply. This is where the reliability score is high. This is where the quality scores are high. This is where the continuity scores are high. And this is where the entire end-to-end, all three are high. So those kind of resilience metrics, when you say resilience, we've broken up into these three aspects, and the scores were given to the salespeople. So that's where I have seen we build a model, a data-driven model for supplier resilience. With AI agents, of course, we can make it more natural language friendly, because I don't expect a salesperson, understanding the entire supply complexity, right? And they need not. There is technology to enable them today. So supplier resilience, yes, but it is still very event driven is how I see, rather than just the ways of working. It will take us some time to really have it as ways of working in terms of and also embedded as part of the processes, enterprise level processes.